I wanted to mention to you guys too that I after the last episode, I texted Rory. I love the part about the boats where like
Yeah.
you two have moved on, and there's like this quiet anticipation, this pregnancy, and in Rory's mood that was really palpable over the thing. He's still thinking about that boat, and I'm driving home from Indiana, and I'm thinking he's still thinking about that boat, and then
I
sure
am.
enough. 5 minutes
Yep.
down the road, he's like, "So the slick craft."
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
I was like, that's the guy.
yeah. I was like, this is a boats episode, but we don't need to pretend it's anything else.
That sound was me in another window on my monitor opening up listings for those boats. like man, I got to get back into those. And like really the Detroit River was not a good spot for that Glastron, but up here would be killer. Like on Long Lake or Silver Lake, that would be the perfect little family. Should see if I should see if I can buy that same boat back again. So I pay $1,500 for it, sell it for $600 after putting like $2,000 into it, and then I could pay $1,500 again for it.
Yeah.
That would be that's boat buying mindset right there.
The money down the rabbit hole.
Wheeling and dealing, baby.
Boat's a lot like a fix-up car too, though. Like if you can wrench, you can save yourself thousands.
Oh yeah.
Thousands. Taking your boat to the marina for work is just like you just bring a stack of cash, like a drug dealer bundle of cash. There you go. See if you can make it work, and then it's like Labor Day weekend. Like we think we got it working.
So
you want to come get it?
$250 an hour or whatever. Oh no, that's marine quality grease. You can't just use regular grease. That's $50. It's like those are marine fasteners. Those are $5 a piece. I'm sorry.
We had to buy them at the other store, okay?
Yeah. But yeah, it's a great thing to have a boat or several boats. It's like
or a friend with a boat.
That's the old joke.
That's the old joke.
Yeah, but then you don't get the pleasure of maintaining your own craft.
Do you remember that sitcom that was briefly on the air about the auto business in Detroit?
Yeah.
That the one guy was clearly supposed to be Henry Ford 3 or whatever, the kid, and they're like, "Oh my God, the corporate stock's down." He's like, "Yeah, I know. I had to sell my boat. Now I'm down to 2 boats." I thought that was a pretty representative, nice line.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a different.
I don't think I ever knew about what was this show? Was it like The Office but with cars?
It was. Yeah, it's called American Auto. Is that right?
Yeah, but the you could tell they had a mole at Ford or something because just the family owned it. Everybody's wearing blue blazers. I mean, it was it was clear that it was like Ford.
Was it a network show or was this like a?
Yeah,
I think on NBC. Yeah,
they did 23 episodes, 2 seasons.
What?
Yeah.
Damn, that's crazy. Hold up.
Circa when?
It ended in 23.
It ran from 21 to 23.
So this is recent.
Yeah. We should do an episode on it.
I never heard about it.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
They had no press for it. It was like I just turned on the TV. I'm like, what is this I'm watching?
I think we knew about it because we were in the auto industry and like people would talk about it around town. But like, it was Ian Roberts from Upright Citizens Brigade. Oh yeah, but yeah, it was. I've never seen it. We should do an episode about it.
We should watch it.
Yeah.
This is how checked out of TV me and Peter are. We're like, what happened?
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I mean, I've literally never heard of this.
No.
I completely escaped my.
The boat joke was so relevant because at one point, one of the Fords, I can't remember which one it was, had to famously spend like $500,000 to dredge the Grosse Pointe Yacht Club so their boat could fit in the dock. Because it drew too much water. I mean, and this is like 10 years ago. This isn't even that long ago.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm sure you can. That's all internet fodder. But
this would be a violation of my long time policy of not watching TV shows. But I will do it for the show. I will do it for the podcast.
We should just do a segment where you watch an episode, report back the major points to us, and we'll get through all 23 episodes. After like a couple months.
Yeah, do a sojourn on like just where the pod is only about American Auto, the TV show. It's like a recap show.
I figure it's only like you can recap an episode in 10 minutes. That's just a weekly segment.
Yeah,
for the Patreon.
That's good.
That or we do a Tom Sharpling style sideshow where it's like, okay, here's our other pod on the Patreon where we just recap American Auto.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Should we introduce
the pod?
We should introduce the pod. The pod is tired. The car podcast for people who understand that cars are bad. With your hosts, your friends, Matty Riley, Rory Carroll, Peter Hughes, that's me. And tonight we are joined, or whenever you're listening to this, we are joined by a special guest, and one of maybe the only people I know. Well, we haven't met. We haven't really met until now, although we've been kind of Instagram kind of acquaintances for a while. But somebody who has bridged the divide between automotive journalism and punk rock, and that is Mr. Andrew Wendler.
Hello.
What's that?
Formerly of the Necros, the legendary hardcore band out of Toledo, right?
Technically Maumee, which is a suburb of Toledo, which we got a lot of mileage out of that. We're about 35 minutes south of Detroit.
Okay. Yeah, and currently you are under the employ of Car and Driver, correct?
That is correct.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's really living Peter's dream here.
No kidding.
Do you prefer Andy or Andrew?
You could go either way with that, really. Most people say Andrew, but
Okay.
good either way.
All right. Well, maybe should we start with a little get to know you, tired style? We usually just kind of ask people about their fleets, their garages. What are you driving?
Okay. Currently, with two children of college age, well, one in high school, one in college. 2004 Honda CR-V, 300,000 miles.
Damn.
2007 BMW X3 with 200,000 miles. And my wife drives like something past 2015, so the number's lost on me, but like a modern, reliable Honda CR-V.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's just currently, it's always in flux. I just got rid of a mint condition, like 2000 Toyota Echo with the manual and air conditioning, which I guess was a real oddball.
Wow.
So,
All right,
but it had like one airbag for the whole car, so we were kind of like, eh.
Yeah, it's also the size of a shoebox.
True.
Sounds good to me.
That's the current fleet, but subject to change at any moment.
So we both have one K24 powered vehicle. So we're good. We have infinite part swappability. Well, not infinite, but some part swappability. If I ever need a timing sprocket, I know who to call.
Exactly. This summer I went through it and did all the gaskets and put in a new VVT valve and starter, and the car's rock solid. It's really crazy.
They're so good.
What year is that one again?
2004.
2004, which is, I'm just looking at I'm getting my generations straight here. Okay, so that's not, it's kind of, they had girthed it up a little bit, but not to the point that it is now.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I guess my brother-in-law had a first generation CR-V that he just had forever, and I drove that thing. It had more than 200,000 miles on it, and it felt brand new, just uncannily. And he's not, He's not an enthusiast. He's not, I mean, he's just using it just like a car, you know? And I couldn't believe just how tight that car was.
It is really crazy. I mean, it needs probably some front tires and alignment this summer, but I mean, there's no play in any of the steering components or driveline. It's bizarre.
Like how do they do that?
I don't know.
They're unnecessary, as it turns out.
Hey, listen, an 04 Honda treated me good over the past week, so that's a good.
Yeah.
They had a good year. They were on their
Oh,
on their
man.
stuff.
Yeah.
I was so jealous seeing you drive that thing. It's I think it's R127 is the body style. Hold on, I used to have that memorized. Let's see. No, that's not what it was. I'll have to think about that. Anyway,
It's good stuff.
All right. Well, Andrew, let's dive into it, and I want to hear. I mean, we usually this just takes the form of a conversation, but I do have some interview type questions that I need to ask. How did you end up, or I'm trying to think what's the I mean, for me, when I have a 13-year-old daughter. When I was 13 years old, when I was her age, which is amazing to me to think about now, I was in 8th grade, and we had to do a project where, like a career type project. So you had to choose, you know, you're not committing to it. Obviously you're 13 years old, but choose a career path.
they should
and
make
do
you
some
commit to it.
research about it.
It should be
really.
legally binding. Yeah.
Right.
No
pressure.
astronauts and firemen.
Right. Yeah. Lots of pilots. Well, so so you had to do a bunch of research, and then you had to interview somebody for this project, somebody in your chosen field. And I was 13 years old, and I was completely obsessed with Car and Driver. And so I wrote a letter and for whatever reason, I addressed it to Don Sherman. He was the guy that I picked. Again, not sure why, but I mean, I liked him as well as anybody else who was writing for the magazine at the time. But it seemed like, yeah, maybe he'll write me back or something. And then he called me, and I talked to him for like an hour and a half on the phone after school one day, and I couldn't believe it. But that was what I wanted to do when I was 13 years old. I wanted to be an automotive journalist. I wanted to write for Car and Driver.
Oh, that's amazing.
Isn't that wild? And then I got, you know, now I was into music at the time, even then. But I got more into music, and I kind of ended up on this other path that you know, took me in a different direction, and then kind of ended up just backdooring my way into it decades later, back into car stuff. But I'm curious to know what was your path? How did you go from playing in the Necros to writing for Car and Driver? And yeah.
Well, I mean, first off, we had Car and Driver, and then later Automobile Magazine in the house growing up.
Mm-hmm.
So I was always reading it. I thought it was great, you know, and then that's how I discovered like PG O'Rourke and stuff through through National Lampoon. But I had to make the connection, like, oh wait, that's the guy from National Lampoon. He's writing in this car magazine. So also older sisters in the house, really into music. Everything's going on. DIY family, always had cars, boats. My dad was a pilot in the Navy and stuff, so a lot of wrenching going on. And I just had friends in the neighborhood. And we were really into skateboarding, and that led to punk rock.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the way it went. And we thought punk rock would be like 9 months, but for whatever reason, we met the Misfits, and they took us under their arm and brought us to New York and played some shows. I mean, we were still in high school. And then right after we got out of high school, they took us to LA, and it turned into a thing. I mean, it was a kind of just almost happenstance.
You guys are in a high school when you're playing with the Misfits, and they bring you to New York.
Yeah, we played at Irving Plaza with them.
That's crazy.
And because they came to Detroit and played, and we went and did our usual thing of sneaking in.
Yeah.
And I don't know, we just really hit it off. Even Glenn was, super nice and everything. We just hit it off. And I think Glenn was kind of looking at like the style of what they were doing then was kind of fading. And he's like, oh, hardcore. That's why there's 300 kids at this show. What's this all about? I thought maybe like, oh, let's get involved with that. And the Misfits thing will revive a little, and there you
Interesting,
go.
yeah.
As many of my friends have blamed me for like, oh, thanks for ruining the Misfits because they were so, comical and sing-along fun. And then after they met all the hardcore kids, the records were just like pounding, grinding, the beat moved up like 100 times. So
yeah. So you guys just turned up at when they came to play in Detroit, but how did you actually end up hanging out with them? Or was it just like such an informal show that everybody was just kind of hanging out?
We interviewed them for Touch and Go magazine because we already knew Tesco.
Oh, okay.
And he owned Touch and Go Records and the magazine before Corey took it over. And so we said, hey, we'll interview the Misfits for you. And he was like, all right. And then we hit it off and we went back to their hotel room and we had videotaped that black and white video of Bookies. We made that because we had this ancient video camera we took to the show. That's all over YouTube and everywhere. And they wanted to see it. So we went back to the hotel, and back then you could play a video in the camera and, run a wire into the TV. Yeah. And that's how it blossomed.
Yeah. And how much older were they than you guys? I mean, if you guys are like, 17, 18?
Yeah, Doyle's the same age. Jerry's about 4 years older. And I think Glenn told me, he tried to keep his age a secret, but one time he told me like, oh, I saw the MC5. And I was like, oh, so you're like a decade older than us.
Classic.
Got him.
Oh, man.
I have also met Danzig. Did you know that? We talked about it on the pod, I think.
We have not.
No, I don't think I've heard this story.
Okay, you, Rory. We have
not. I don't want to get in the middle of Andrew's story with the digression. You can finish your thing, and then I'll tell my.
Put a pin in that. Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
That's really about it. I mean, even Glenn was a sweetheart, and the thing about Glenn is just that, like, I mean, I'm kind of out of it from my point of view, but up until about like 1987. The dude, like, he was just so spot on with his imagery and knew what to pull from and like what to steal, the old saying, steal from the best. Yeah. And his knowledge, and they weren't playing at this. I mean, these guys had like just stacks of movie posters and early VHS copies of out of print horror movies and stuff. I mean, they were really into this stuff. It wasn't like a pose at all. Right. Like they'd be like, oh, we need some money. Well, Glenn will take some posters into the city and sell them at Jerry Ongar's movie collector shop. It was a real thing.
So how did you go from there to Car and Driver though?
Well, what happened was all along I had been writing. I mean, I've always been writing, and I'm a few hours short of a English degree. And I think the first car thing I did, I started submitting stuff to MPH magazine, and then they were like, your stuff's really funny. Do you want to come on and just like basically write jokes, like the stuff that used to be in the back pages, all those fake ads and stuff. And then I did a couple car reviews for them, and that worked pretty well. Then that got shut down, and I got picked up at MSN Autos right away. And it was me, and that's where I met like Sam Smith and who else was there at the time? Chuck Tanner and a few other guys. And you know how this business is. You just start meeting people and talking to people. And MSN Autos, it didn't go away, but they went to a affiliate service. And I applied at Car and Driver and got it. And that's when they were just figuring out the internet. Like, I remember somebody there telling me, like, not too long before you got here, there was still like AOL. Car and Driver was an AOL keyword.
Oh, wow. AOL keywords.
So is this like aughts? Like early aughts?
Yeah. They just needed horsepower basically to crank out content while they were figuring out how are we going to approach the internet at Car and Driver? Right. What are we going to do? So I did like a long span, and then I left to go away to an outlet that will remain unmentioned for about 4 years, and it never really got going. And I was like, this isn't working out so well. and the guys at Car Driver were looking for somebody to do make model pages, and I just sort of slipped back in the door. So there you go. I mean, I'd still maybe do the whole New York interview and all that stuff and all the paperwork and everything, but I got my job back.
Yeah. At what do you know at what point they closed the old Ann Arbor office
On Hogback Road?
Yeah.
Yeah, Hogback. Let's see, that would have been. Don't quote me on this, but I'm thinking that was right before 2000.
Okay, so you came in after that.
Yeah, I came over to Eisenhower, where it is now.
Okay.
And my first tenure, I sat next to Don Sherman for about 5 of those years that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Gleaned a lot of wisdom about how certain things are engineered and why they're engineered that way. And also some hilarious stories about testing cars.
Yeah.
And things like that. So yeah, very, very fun sitting next to him.
Are there any that you can share?
I don't know. Probably the good ones are all probably left private. But he was a good driver, and he was a mechanic and had, I think, some sort of engineering degree, but he was a mechanic in the Army. So it was nothing to like come into the work and he'd be out in the garage, like changing the clutch in a Miata or something. So just a great guy to, one of those dudes, he's kind of harsh, says what's on his mind, straight shooter. But if you just hang out with him, you'll learn a lot.
Yeah. I mean, he kind of legendarily, I mean, when the RX-7 came out, I don't know if he bought one or if they just got or if it was like a test car or something, but he took the rotary apart. Like he just right? Is that apocryphal, or is that
well, along the same veins of Sherman, my joke was when he spent a good part of 25 years saying the mid-engine Corvette is going to happen. I don't know if you go back with the magazine. He was always like, this is going to happen.
Predicting, it's right around the corner.
So when they finally started leaking that this was really going to happen, I actually called some people I knew at GM, and I'm like, look, I don't know if the world at large will get a laugh out of this, but if you let Sherman introduce that car at the Detroit Auto Show, every journalist will just die laughing because, I mean, he's just been yammering on like, it's coming. They've got it. I know they're doing it for years.
It was like, running joke. It was like every generation was the next one.
Yeah. And he just was like, and we're like, okay, Don, whatever. And then when we heard it was coming out, we're like, oh my God, this is amazing. And he bought one. He bought one of the first ones off the line. With his own money. So there you go.
I grew up reading all of those stories and I just, to me, it just seemed like, okay, this is the bullet train to Vegas. This is the thing that will never, will be talked about forever and will never come to fruition. At whatever point it was in the kind of mid-teens, that it started, prototypes started being spotted, testing, that were clearly mid-engine Corvettes. And it's like, and it seemed like, oh no, this actually is going to happen. And all I could think was just like something, like some shit is going to go down, something major, like this, the end is nigh, because if I know one thing, it's that there will never be a mid-engine Corvette, right?
Right.
And like, I mean, I really did think like either global economic catastrophe or, World War IV or whatever is going to just like some Deus ex machina is going to drop out of the sky to stop this because this cannot happen. This and I did think that it was this is part of my theory. This is kind of like a something that I've actually thought like this should be a whole episode, but if I'm telling the story now, I had this theory that the C8 Corvette caused coronavirus. That's the reason that we got COVID-19 was because General Motors and Chevrolet tempted fate. They
weren't supposed to do that,
by bringing this thing to market. And I mean, and honest to God, the first time that I saw one, the first C8 that I saw was when I was driving past the fucking factory in Bowling Green on my way to Memphis in the first day of March to go record these 2 albums that we're going to make the first two weeks of March 2020, which like by the end of those two weeks but you know, by the time we had finished recording those records, the world was in free fall. And all I could think was like, I should have written it all out, but like the other thing was, do you remember the sinkhole, like the museum? If you like, I remember at some point looking up the date of that, and it coincided almost exactly with like either like some internal like go ahead decision at you know like the C8 officially getting the go ahead, or some announcement about it that no, you know, this is actually happening, and then like that was the warning shot, was the thing that we all ignored at our peril, was what, you know, when
this thing called you still have time.
When God made the ground open up underneath the Corvette Museum and swallow, like, you know, 7 generations of Corvettes into the earth, and they went ahead and did it anyways, and we got what we got. But that's just my theory about the C8.
It was such a big deal. I mean, especially as Rory can agree, I'm sure. In the Detroit area. I mean, there was dudes renting helicopters to go get spy shots over Milford. It was so big. It was our biggest story. I mean, I don't know the exact numbers, but it was easily the debut story was our biggest story of the year on the internet for Car and Driver.
Yeah, that was a huge. Do you remember the Holden Commodore mid-engine prototype? So it was like a Holden in the front, and then it was a Ute in the back. But do you guys remember it? Like the coolest prototype of, like, they should have just built it like that. I'll put a picture in the chat.
Wait, was this a C8 prototype that they disguised as a Holden Commodore? Oh, that's funny. I don't think I remember that.
It's a Holden Commodore Ute, so like the bed is there, but in the back is the V8. But it was an actual manual too. One of the cool, like one of those like accidentally like super cool. Like I remember the SLS AMG.
Oh, hell yes.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Just
no, they
should
have built that. They should have built that. I mean, that's the thing. Like, look, man, the C8's cool. What they're doing with it now, I mean, the race cars are unbelievable. The ZR1 is amazing. But like, I don't know, man. I would have taken. I mean, going back to the like every decade going back to the 60s had its mid-engine Corvette prototype, and I think they all looked better than the one that we ended up getting.
Oh yeah. Yeah, if you ever get a chance to go to the GM archives in Warren, they have a bunch of the Corvette prototypes, and even I think Rory, isn't there like a mid-engine Wankel prototype in there?
Yeah, it's like the.
I remember. Yeah, that was like the 70s, the Aerovet, right?
Yeah, and they all look better than anything that ever made production. But I guess when you're not dealing with safety regulations, you can do that.
It's safety, and it's also the stupid two golf bags have to fit in the trunk. I mean, that's the reason that it looks the way it does. It's just like, man,
bizarre.
Fuck the golfers, man.
So bizarre.
Give us a good looking car instead.
I know.
They can take something else to the golf course. They can take their Escalade.
The earlier when I said just to correct myself on the Odyssey, it's bothering me. The R127 is a Mercedes. The Odyssey generation that Matty was just using to move is the RL1. I think maybe the best looking minivan of all time. Sorry, I just apologize for digressing and then just slip that in there. Anyway, mid-engine Corvette. Peter, did you have more questions? Do you guys want to hear? Go ahead.
Oh yeah, well no, I want to get we got to get back to Glenn.
Yeah.
I want to hear more Misfits stories.
So I was in Europe for a press launch, and I was coming home and I was like tired and kind of hungover or whatever, and I was at the airport and I was like, started seeing guys who looked like they were in like a metal band of some kind, or like, you know, like all the dark clothes, long hair and stuff, and like carrying gear. And I was like, one of those guys looks really, really familiar. And I forgot, it was like the bass player or something. I was like, I know that guy. Like, I've seen him before. I know what band he's in. And then like one of the other guys had a Danzig t-shirt on, and I was like, oh, like, you know, it's like, it is a metal band, but you wouldn't wear your own t-shirt to the airport. And then I was like, you know, started talking to the bass player in line for coffee. Still couldn't figure out who he was. Didn't want to ask. And I was like, oh, that's weird. You know, whatever. One of the mysteries of my life. I'll never know this band that was coming back from Europe at the same time as me. So I walked back. I was actually coming back from Sweden. I was on this like one-person press trip to Sweden, and I was sitting coach and like middle of the plane, sitting in the aisle, and I'm, you know, watching everybody come down the aisle. I like to inspect everybody and kind of try to guess who's going to be sitting by me. And around the corner, came Glenn Danzig, and I was like, oh shit, it's Danzig. And I was like, but I was like, he's like totally unmistakable, you know, like he's jacked and like 5'4" and like he's Glenn Danzig. So I was like, oh shit, Danzig's on the plane. What a story, you know, like incredible. And then I was like, you know, he keeps walking. You're walking. You're like, oh my God, is Glenn gonna sit by me? And like, it's like, there's no way. And it's like, again, like I'm hungover, exhausted, and I was like, oh shit, Glenn is gonna sit by me. Like it was becoming clear, looking ahead of me and behind me, that we're not that many seats left open. And so he sits down right next to me, and he's like, hey, how's it going? And I was like, I was like, good. I was like, you guys playing some shows over here? And he's like, yeah, you know, it's festival season. He's like, that's when we make a lot of money, and yada, yada. And I was like making small talk with him, but I didn't want to like reveal too much knowledge, because it was like, you know, I didn't want to like, it's like that's your nightmare if you're Glenn Danzig, is you sit next to a guy who like wants to talk about Glenn Danzig and the Misfits for like a 5-hour flight. And so, but I'm like, I got to get out of that. You know, it's like this conversation was happening and moving, and like you said, super nice guy, very easy to talk to. And like, I was like, man, like maybe we will just like chat the whole way back. And then, so then, after about like 10, 15 minutes, a woman came down the aisle and then pointed out to Glenn that he was in her seat, and then sat in between us. So it kind of ruined our budding. But yeah, what a cool guy. Like, it's so nice and so easy to talk to, and was like telling me all about their tour and where they'd been, and like, you know, what crowds were good and stuff. It was like, man, this is cool. Like, this is great. This is better than watching a movie. But
that's so funny.
That's awesome.
But yeah, I met him too. I can confirm Glenn Danzig is super nice.
He's a sweet guy when you know him. I actually saw him at what's that big festival they have in Chicago every year?
Pitchfork? Yeah.
Yeah. And when they headlined like 4 or 5 years ago. And I hadn't seen him in, 15 years at this point. And he actually smiled. I'm like, Glenn! And he smiled, and I felt like, my job here is done. I took his bad mood off before the game. They came out and they were good. So
yeah. I mean, to your point, Andrew, that of how genuine their interest in that kind of subject matter is. The one time that I've crossed paths with Glenn Danzig, we were playing a show in Denver, and there was a bookstore down the street. I can't remember. I think it must have been singer John. In the Mountain Goats, who was browsing in this bookstore, and he saw and Danzig, who were in town, who had played the night, or maybe they were playing like the next night or something. He sees Danzig come in and just make a beeline for the true crime section. That's like it's all. He knew exactly what he was there for. Yep.
Yeah, and I remember there's like, I can't remember which. I had to switch to my microphone here because my phone was dying.
Sure.
But there was like this. I think it was an original Night of the Living Dead poster, and Jerry and Doyle had it shellacked to the wall in their basement. And I was just like, because when they got it, it was probably like an aunt picked it up for them in the city or something, and it had no value. But I'm like, now it's like, it's got to be pulling some serious money. But yeah, they were the best. They were so fun to hang out with. So,
how so you guys did do some touring back in the day. How many years were you on the road with the Necros, and how often would you guys tour?
Well, we toured extensively with the Misfits in '82, and that was hilarious because a lot of labels were trying to sign them. So when we were in LA, we stayed in up in the canyon at some executive's house for a week. And that was just like to us was so hilarious, like be swimming in the pool at night and look down on LA, look down on Hollywood Boulevard from up in the canyon. And I think it was Daphne Edwards' house. Oh yeah, we saw Jack Nicholson like down the street out by the gate and stuff. And for kids from Ohio, Michigan, it was just like, oh my God. Yeah. And then the next summer we toured by ourselves, and that was a blast. God, we were out forever. And that's where we met like the big boys in Austin, became great friends with those guys. Still friends with them all and stuff. I think we did like 5 tours, and the Underground Punk Network was so good. And then because of like our manager ended up with some other management, we actually did a whole tour with, believe it or not, Megadeth.
I saw that. Yeah, that's crazy.
And they wanted to cash in on this. Everybody wants to cash in. Like Metallica were wearing all the Misfits shirts and like, the Anti-Nowhere League shirts and being punk.
Yeah.
And Megadeth, as sweet as Mustaine is, he doesn't know anything about punk rock or anything, So he's just like, oh wait, those guys are punk, and we have the same manager. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Well, there was that weird moment kind of in the mid '80s where kind of the kind of thrash metal bands and the hardcore scene kind of overlapped. It's like, these two pretty, previously pretty segregated groups of people just kind of looked across the hall at each other and kind of like recognized, it's like, wait, are we the same? Right? It's like,
yeah.
And so yeah, you had that crossover with, with those bands. And I feel like just, and a lot of it, like with the Misfits too. Just the kind of the aesthetic and the imagery, like you're talking about, like that was definitely a bridge. I definitely I had friends in junior high school and high school who were kind of, hardcore kids who started flirting with metal. Maybe because it's like started wearing like lots of bracelets and stuff, like that was the vibe.
Yeah, and if you remember, Discharge and the Cockney Rejects just full on went metal, like just full on put out these metal, and it was just like, it was sad because like people were just like, what is this? You know what I mean? Like they didn't even try to play like speed metal. It was just like they wanted to be AC/DC or something. But yeah. So anyhow, so we did that tour. It was hilarious.
What kind of rooms was Megadeth playing at that point?
I think we played pretty. Some places big, like some place it was the sporting arena in that town.
Wow.
Other places it was smaller. Like we did in Atlanta. What's the famous club? The 688 or whatever. And it was just, those places would just be sold out. They'd be oversold. And some places like much bigger joints. Played Harpo's in Detroit, obviously. But it was funny because like half the time, like Pittsburgh was just great. It was like, those kids are so cool in the Midwest. They don't care what the label is. They just want to get nuts, and have fun. And other places like LA was very polite, but they were kind of like, yeah, whatever. And that we had actually played with Motorhead at the Santa Monica Civic the summer before.
Damn.
So it was Motorhead, us, and DOA. And I think somebody else was supposed to play, but the time got tight and they couldn't do it. So anyhow, it was just weird. We never knew what we actually were going to get. The places where we thought like we are going to get hit by so many shoes and beer cans tonight, it would be great. and other places not so great. And then because we hadn't had enough punishment, then we came off of that and did like a 6-week tour with the Circle Jerks, 6 or 7 weeks, something like that. So
Wow. Maybe you can talk a little bit about like what were you guys touring in, and a thing that I'm old enough to remember to have experienced tour before the age of mobile communications, and yeah. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that. I'm curious to know what were you guys actually touring in?
well, the punk rock van of choice was the Dodge because I think it was the cheapest you could get used, with either the 318 or the Slant 6, and dead reliable, 727 transmission, super reliable. And of course, Ron, the bass player, who's been in like a million bands, is currently in Negative Approach, and when they flip the switch and they do their hard rock thing, I forget what that's called, but anyhow, he's a Detroit guy, true, like his dad was always restoring cars and stuff. So like our van would break, and people like, they'd be like, "Oh man, your whole tour is ruined." And the Barry's like, "No, Ron and Andy just put a whole new timing set in out on the street." Because like nobody else had like wrenches in their band, and we were always like, "Oh, the U-joint's broke in Pennsylvania," and the drive shaft like came off and went rolling down the hill. So people are like, "Oh, your tour's ruined." And like, no, we hitchhiked into town, found a junkyard, bought a drive shaft, hitchhiked back out to the truck and put it on. It's
Classic.
just like growing up in the Rust Belt type stuff you did. The stuff you learned growing up in the late 70s, early 80s. So anyhow, that was it. And then when we finally got some real money from Enigma, which was part of, I think, Capitol at that time, we got like a swanky Ford extended van with like dual air and captain's chairs and a trailer and all that stuff. And, so things were nice. That for us, that was super nice. We never really felt the need to do a camper or a bus because they were so expensive. And we're like, we want to take money home, and we can just do 2 Motel 6 rooms because we're only in them for like 6 hours anyhow.
Sure.
And but I remember the guys in Red Cross once, they were like, we were talking to those guys. They're like, "Man, when we see a band that has a new Ford, this would be like the first generation of the sort of softer, more aero F1 or E150 vans. They're like, we know that's a serious touring band," because those guys are just so hilarious. I'm like, right on, man.
They've got flush headlights.
But then I ended up just staying on the road with like that band Big Chief formed, and I knew people at Capitol because we were on a division of Capitol, and they sort of made me their guy to sort of take care of those dudes and make sure they weren't getting into too much trouble. Do sound, I would sell T-shirts, I would drive a lot.
Yeah. So were you like officially like tour managing, TMing,
tour, you know how those bare bones tours, you're everything managing.
Oh yeah.
And they did a big tour with the Beastie Boys on the Check Your Head album. Took most of the year, and then when that tour ended in New York, I stayed in New York and worked at SIR in New York for a while.
Oh, okay.
So, but all the while, eyeing the car thing and thinking about it and submitting stuff to Hot Rod.
Yeah.
Things like that, little blurbs when I met up with, or at least met through the telephone back then. But yeah, to jump around a little bit, touring without any kind of navigation was crazy because you just had a big atlas. And then as soon as you get to town, you'd stop at a gas station and get on the payphone, start calling the club, call the record stores. And it was like every day, the same thing. Okay, the club's not open till 4, so we got 3 hours to hit every record store and every guitar store in the city. And let's do it. And we were crazy record collectors. I mean, insane. Like we'd just be driving along the desert in the middle of the night, and somebody'd be like, I get the First Stooges album if they have an original pressing. Just like randomly. We're like, okay, cool. But yeah, it was really funny. And statute of limitations is worn out now, but there was a set of telephone credit card numbers that was shuffled between all the different bands. Like we all had it. We got them from like Flag. And so you would book your whole tour using these credit card numbers that were someone secretary had pilfered from like Hughes Aircraft or something. They would, then they'd figure it out and one would die, but it was literally like 2 pages of bogus credit card numbers that had been mimeographed like 900 times.
Wow.
Anyhow, I don't want to.
Is that wire fraud or credit card fraud?
I don't know, but
Call him
I
in.
heard it happened.
Yeah, yeah. It's a good pod question. which type of fraud were you committing at the time?
Who among us?
Yeah, yeah. Who hasn't committed a fraud or two in their day?
See, when you said the thing about phone cards and numbers, I where I imagined that going was like what I remember were those cards that you would get so that you could make calls like from a payphone that would get charged back to your home telephone number. But it would just be this incredibly convoluted thing where you would be at the payphone, you would have to, I can't remember the order, but you would have to put in like a 16-digit, like basically like a credit card number. Yeah. That by the end of the tour you would just have fucking memorized because you've done this so many times. And then the number you're dialing, and then at some point, you would get through and, but depending on like what network the payphone that you were calling from was part of, like there was always the surprise when you got home of like, oh, okay, so that call that I made from New Mexico, I got charged $5 for that. But this call that I made from fucking, like North Dakota, for whatever, like they charged me $40 for this like 5-minute phone call. And you have like no recourse, it's just like, yeah, fuck you. It's like, sorry. It's like such a shitty, impossible system. And I remember like so many times, I mean, for us, it was always like the thing that you're describing of like finding the payphone, calling the club, or just like trying to call to advance, and this is stuff that like I later just learned, like, no, this is standard practice. You call the club, a week out to advance the show with them, whatever. But we didn't know this stuff at the time. So, so you're just looking for a payphone because it's like, all right, we've already had a flat tire or we've gotten lost. And now it's like, so we're already going to be 3 hours late. We're not going to make load in. We're not going to make sound check. But we need to call the club and let them know that we are going to show up. We will be there for the actual show. And then it's like, well, yeah, you're in the middle of like BF Texas, and like there's like, okay, now you're going to spend the next 45 minutes trying to find a payphone. And so it's like you're digging yourself like deeper and deeper and deeper. And yeah, just like, I mean, it's stuff that touring bands now, like, I mean, you hate to sound like old man yelling at the cloud. Is like, man, you do not know how easy you got it, because the shit that we used to have to do just getting around. I mean, like you say, like, I mean, when John and I started touring with Mountain Goats, even, I mean, this is cell phone era now. I didn't have one yet. But this is in the early 2000s, and but still it was just ingrained for me. It's like, okay, well, first day of tour, the thing that you do is go to the gas station and buy yourself a big Rand McNally Road Atlas,
Yeah,
because
baby.
you're gonna be wearing that thing out by the end of the tour. And that was our nav, was a Road Atlas.
Still good, still works.
That is one of the things that I have, like, legit. I have very little nostalgia, but looking at a map and planning a trip on a map is so satisfying, and so like being on the road and looking at your little map and trying to be like, okay, you got to remember the next 5 exits or whatever. I really like. I can't say that I miss it. It's obviously easier to do it the other way, but I do have a nostalgia, like, sense memory of like, oh God, that felt so good. like it's like the competency of like
the thing is it's satisfying until shit goes wrong, like until you are late for some place, until you've taken the wrong exit, until you're just like, okay, how the fuck do we get back to where we just were, to, you know, like the level of just panic and you know, and you're always, the person with the map in their lap is always like the least like the wrong person for the job, right? So it's either you're the map guy and you're like the one person who can actually like, okay, figure this out and get this, but you're just like, you know, you're operating at maximum capacity, just trying to like look around, like you're not driving, obviously somebody else is driving, you're trying to navigate and you're trying to, you know, situational awareness, like orient yourself, you know, in your environment, wherever you are, figure out how that corresponds to the map, figure out where you are, figure out how to get from where you are to where you know, and be feeding in like coherent instructions to the person behind the wheel. I mean, it's fun when it's working, but when it's like, you know, when you're in Europe,
yeah.
you know, when you're in like in the middle of nowhere in some tiny town in Germany, it's not fun, man. It sucks. It sucks dick. And I mean, and I have to, and like the thing is, like, I mean, even like I just got back from this yeah, I went to Australia a month or so ago and drove down there for the first time, and first time driving on the other side of the road, and I mean, I you know, I did fine, but all I could think is like, I cannot imagine doing this without the nav telling me like what lane to be. You know what I mean? like let alone navigating like.
I always found on those
multiple
budget
off-ramps
tours that superstar teams would sort of emerge from all the van people in the van, like his driver navigation team, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, we're 30 minutes out of Philly. And like, it was kind of unspoken, but you're like, okay, let's get Todd and Ron up front. You know, they're going to know they can handle this, while the rest of us are all arguing about nonsense and being horrible to each other. Yeah, within like a week, it becomes really clear, like who are two people who can communicate without, you know, damaging each other's feelings and being obnoxious and make it happen.
Yeah, or just capable of doing it. Yeah, and yeah, God, that, you know, this I don't want to turn this into pet peeve hour, but man, a thing that would drive me nuts would be like, you do the long drive, and you know, maybe we're all in a Sprinter van at this point, and there's a bunch of us, and we do the long drive where, you know, you spend 6-7 hours in the van. And the whole time everybody's on they've got their ears in, they're watching a movie or on their iPad, reading a book, whatever, watching the scenery go by. Like, it'll be 6 hours of just total silence, right? And now we're approaching. Now we're like 15 minutes out. Okay, we're getting off the interstate. Now we're in the city. Now we're trying to find our way to the venue. And this is the time when all the people in the back just start, oh man, hey, did you hear about this? You know, and it's just like, it's like, you guys, we're trying to fucking find the club now. Can you shut the fuck up?
I will turn this Sprinter around.
Because the two people who actually have to be paying attention right now, like we're trying to do a thing here, and I know you guys want to have like a fun conversation and like tell funny jokes and stuff, but like the time for that was the last 7 hours, not right now.
I can pretty well identify which group I would be in.
The thing is, I mean, I'm as guilty as anybody else. You know, it's like, if I'm not in the passenger seat with the map in my lap, then I'm in the back.
Yapping.
Cracking wise,
I unfortunately must out myself as Mr. No Fun. I'm driving and you need to tell me where the parking garage is right now. Shut up. That's me.
Good for you.
I'm your man.
Good for you, Matty.
Wait, and now I produce the podcast, so we're all where we're supposed to be in life.
Because they always gave us a guy, to sort of drive and navigate, and that was
Sure.
only his job. And usually, you know how like the Germans have a year where they can do social service or military service after high school before.
Right.
Yeah, it was always a guy like who did that and had like 5 weeks in between. And I would thank God, because we would have just we'd still be at the airport if not for those guys.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, same for us mostly, but there definitely were times where I would be riding shotgun in Europe and having to navigate, like having to help the European driver, our local, just find the venue or whatever.
I don't know what this says about me, but I think like when I was in my using maps era, I never recall being stressed out or lost. And I know, like biography wise, I know there are several times when I was like famously very lost and like went and was hours, if not days late to stuff. But I have no association. I think I was just such a self-centered asshole back then. Like, I don't remember feeling bad or stressed about it. Be like, well, I'll get there when I get there. Like, if I'm a day late, I'm a day late. But I wasn't touring. I didn't have anyone counting on me in that respect to like put a show on. But no stress whatsoever associated with the map navigation, despite me knowing full well that several times it went very, very badly. But I guess, I don't know. I guess I've grown a lot since then, maybe. Actually, I think the thing is that there are people in my life now who will be mad at me if I'm really late to stuff, which was not the case back in the map days.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. The stakes are lower. I mean, generally speaking, if you're not, if you're not going, I mean, you're going to work. When you're on tour, every time you're driving, you're going to work. so you kind of need to get, and your work is a different place every time. So which makes it quite a bit more complicated. Andy, you guys played, I mean, the list of bands that you guys played with, if not toured with, is pretty impressive. Do you have any Black Flag stories that you can share?
Yeah, we played with them at Club Doobie in Lansing, Michigan when we were like juniors in high school. And that would have been I think that was after Keith wasn't singing anymore. Got to be great friends with those guys. Greg is always a little standoffish, but Bill Stevenson, I mean, like he's basically from Ohio. I mean, he's not, but he's like just basically a big, dumb, goofy guy like we are. And
Sure.
Culturally Ohioan, yeah.
All those guys, we just got to be great friends with them. But the Doobie show was hilarious. I don't think we ever played in LA with them because they were pretty big at that point. They would do like the Santa Monica Civic and stuff.
Right.
Henry, we knew from DC because DC to Detroit's like a 7-hour drive. So we had already cross-pollinated with those guys. And he was in SOA. We were the first people I think that knew that he got the Black Flag gig.
Wow.
For some reason, I think he rode with us to New York to something, or no, we were driving to DC. I can't remember. We used to. Well, here this all ties in, and this is kind of timely with the 50th anniversary of Saturday Night Live. Famously, they finally showed the Fear clip for real after pretending it didn't forever.
Wow, I didn't hear about that. Amazing.
They showed it on the 50th anniversary music special.
Oh,
A couple of myself and Henry and Tesco V, we were all there. And it was funny, like that aired and people are sending me there's a one snapshot they showed apparently where I'm just like standing there and everybody started sending it to me. But we would always bounce between New York and DC and Detroit. So like Henry would take the train up or whatever, and then he'd ride back with us. I mean, don't quote me exactly on these dates and times, but because we did it so many times. So we were totally down with those guys. And of course, Minor Threat, who were amazing. And Brian Baker's still a good buddy of mine to this day. But yeah, Black Flag would come to town. It was a big deal. They'd do 2 or 3 nights in Detroit and sell it out like crazy, all ages, and then regular. we had this club called the Freezer, our underground club, which was like just run with like no rules or regulations whatsoever, because this is Detroit 1982, you know.
Yeah.
And so like the Misfits or Black Flag would play their big show at Clutch Cargo and sell all the tickets and stuff, and then we would have flyers made up for them playing the Freezer the next night. But we, out of respect to the big club, because we wanted to make as much money as possible, you know, we'd start taking them out as soon as the show was over, and that was always a good time. So yeah, I mean, from Social Distortion to Minor Threat to Minutemen.
Oh, where did you play with the Minutemen? I'm sorry to interrupt.
We did a two in all ages and a late night at Stashes in Columbus, Ohio.
Oh yeah,
which was awesome. That was a great night. I just loved those guys so much back then.
One of my favorite bands of all time. Yeah,
and I can tell you, they had a Ford Econoline, and D Boone changed the parking lot in between the gigs. Isn't that crazy? He's like, comes up, do you have an oil filter, Reg? And I'm like, he's like, I'm changing the oil out back. And I'm like, aren't you playing another show in like 30 minutes? He's like, yeah, but we got to get it done.
Wow.
Nice.
Just park over the storm drain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, our trip was the roasting pans.
Oh yeah.
You'd pull up to Walmart and do the whole oil change there in the roasting pan, and then what a horrible thing. I mean, I can't even believe I'm admitting that.
Where you just leave it behind.
Well, back then they were just started emerging into the big 5-quart jugs, you know. Otherwise we were getting like 5 or 6 cans or small plastic bottles. But once the 5-quart jugs were available, it was just a funnel away to take it and then zip it back over to AutoZone or around the back of the building where they had the auto center and go, here's your oil.
Yeah. I committed a couple of oil change sins as a young man myself. There was like a Popular Mechanics diagram of what to do with your oil when it's like how to dig a hole in the ground and fill it with gravel. To take care of your oil.
For real? Is that what you were supposed to do?
Dude, people still post that online to laugh at. Yeah. It still goes around.
Oh my god.
A friend of mine went to Hocking, Ohio, where they have this like famous outdoor school where you go if you want to be like a park ranger or whatever, or a naturalist. And one of his teachers was like, oh yeah, I save all the oil they went deep into the woods of southern Ohio, northern West Virginia, and built these stairs on this trail so more people could access it out of timber. And then the instructor gets all these jugs of used oil out and starts pouring them all over the stairs. And he's like, yeah, this will keep them in good condition for years to come. And they're all like, I'm going to work like at an environmental organization, you know.
Oh my god.
We had a kind of a different understanding of what to do. I mean, it makes sense logically. It comes out of the ground, right? And then it's just in the engine for a little while, and then it makes sense that it could go back. That I obviously that's not true, but you could see how people would get that idea.
I mean, listen,
like,
seems fine.
My roommate who went nuts and moved to Florida used to change her oil within the past year and still do that. We found out. So like sometimes you don't learn things.
Yeah. I mean, you always wonder like how much could 5 quarts of oil really be in the scale of like the water table, but it is actually quite bad to do. It's yeah, it's like you wouldn't think, but yeah, it doesn't take a lot of used motor oil in the ground to cause problems. As the owner of a well, that's we're on a well here, and like we have these autumn olive bushes. And I like you talk to farmers or whatever, and they're like, all you got to do is like use the most toxic set of chemicals that like you have to have a license to buy. It's like it'll kill them right away, and it's like like we're literally drinking the groundwater in our house, like but everybody is so stoked to not just put motor oil in the ground, but to put all kinds of horrible pesticides in the ground. Anyway,
look, man, the ground's not going to get cancer.
That's right. That's what I'm
saying. Andy, speaking of Gin, did you see the posting that was going around a week or so ago that Gin posted? Black Flag looking for bass player, pick style, Austin area, practice in Taylor, must be available to tour full time. Send recordings and or videos of your playing to GregGin001 at gmail.com.
Wow. I did not see that, but a couple people mentioned it to me. And apparently he doesn't pay very well. And that's
Damn.
how he goes through people.
No, of course. I mean,
Yeah. I did see someone who saw them playing and he had a theremin on stage like a year or two ago and said that Greg was just like out of his mind having the best time of his life messing with his theremin.
I can imagine it. I did go and see him. He came and played here in Rochester at the Bug Jar, which is our kind of venerable dive venue that's been around, I think, going back to maybe the late 80s, even early 90s. But Ginn came with, I can't remember if he was billing it as the Corrugators or there was another, he had like, it was two bands that he was touring with, and the other one, it was just like a compound word, like I want to say like Jigsaw or something like that, but that's not what it was. But it was I don't know if you've heard. I mean, there's the Black Flag records that he's been doing, but there were these records that he was putting out in the aughts where it was like Greg Ginn and the Taylor, Texas Corrugators, and it's like it's the most just unlistenable. I mean, it's so comically awful. There's this CD that we picked up at a record store in, like, I don't know, somewhere in Olympic Peninsula, Washington or someplace. And, but it was just called, we couldn't resist the siren call of the artwork that just looks like it's MS Paint. And the name of the name of the CD is Goof Off Experts. And this one is worth looking up. Everybody that I'm speaking to now, everybody listening at home.
What a cover.
Just at some point, over the next week or so, make a note just to find and spend a good 10 or 15 minutes with Goof Off Experts by Greg Ginn.
I will. I've seen the cover, so I know what you're talking about.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
It's the most. I mean, there was the whole thing with Flag and when he, I mean, even like in the 80s when he was doing Gone, there would, and he would just be playing like this really out stuff, and lots of people thought it's like, oh yeah, man, it's like jazz. It's like, no, man, it's just bad. It's just not good. It's not. And this is like the apotheosis of that stuff, where it's just it's so bad. But the show that he came and played here, he had like this like these kids with him that were the band, but then he also had like two TV screens, like big screen TVs, just like on top of like the amps to either side of the stage, and almost like remember the old iTunes, like when iTunes first came out and it had like the visualizer screen or whatever, where you could just push the button on the iTunes thing and it would just like make these just kind of weird psychedelic patterns, like kind of related to the music you're listening to. It was basically that, except on these like flat screen like really big TVs. It was just the most like half-assed, mailed in. It was so, I mean, it was kind of brilliant because it was just so up its own ass. But man, it was, I mean, it was really something. And there were definitely people there who, I mean, I had an idea of what to expect, but there were definitely people there who were coming out because it's like, yeah, man, it's Greg Ginn, he's a legend. And they're just watching it and just being like, yeah, man, like, and he's just wanking. he's just doing the guitar wank. And it's oh.
You know what was I love all the eras of Black Flag, the early ones, obviously with Keith and Ron and but what was a very short-lived version that was great with Chuck Biscuits on drums and Des playing guitar and singing, second guitar and singing. And
Oh,
they
okay.
toured. I don't think they ever recorded, but they toured for like 7 months. And Chuck was like, do you know Chuck? He's probably
No.
out of the drumming business by the time you came around.
Yeah.
I don't know, but yeah, he just,
I mean, I know the name. I've never, we've never crossed paths.
yeah, I mean, he's such a crazy dude. DOA, Circle Jerks,
Yeah.
Black Flag,
Yeah.
Social Distortion, Danzig, and now he's I think he's
Wow.
a truck driver.
Wow.
But
Isn't Circle Jerks, is the Circle Jerks that's touring now, isn't it pretty close to original lineup?
Joey C's on drums.
Oh, okay.
But it is.
Yeah.
Other than that, it's Xander is on bass, who was with him for not original, but with him longer than any other bass player, and Joey C on drums, and Keith and Greg, who were, I mean, the real motivation behind that band anyhow was always Keith.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a great version of Black Flag. They just destroyed, because Chuck, he just plays such a rock thing that it kind of balanced Greg's.
Mhm.
I'm going to be a free jazz guy, It's like, just a great version to see live. But anyhow,
Right. Yeah. I played in a band in the 90s who were friends with a guy who worked at New Alliance at the time, like late 80s, early 90s, and so he had a lot of connections at the, kind of SST and New Alliance at the time, and this another friend. I don't want to out any of these people,
right?
Publicly, but one of the, like, they were asking one of these guys who worked actually in the SST office and did like some of their kind of behind the scenes work, and they asked him about, like, so what's Greg like? He's like, he just said, he comes into the office, he's high, like he's smoking pot, like, just like every minute of the day, and he's just in his office, and he's just playing guitar like nonstop. He just that's all he does is just blaze and just noodle on the guitar. And the great line that he had was just, he just said, like, and it's like, I don't know, man, it doesn't get any better. Like, it doesn't matter how much he plays. I mean, I've watched him. He plays like literally all day long, and it just sounds the same.
Wow.
and that's the thing. Like, when you read like the Rollins, the Rollins diaries, the Get in the Van stuff, and that mentality of just like, no, we're gonna go. And it seems like again, he still has that mentality of that kind of like drill sergeant thing of like, no, we're gonna rehearse 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day, in the dark, like in a storage unit in the dark.
I've been to this classic storage unit, watch them practice.
Wow. Please. What was
it? Goes back to Greg. Henry was glad to have us, and Bill was glad to have us, but Greg thought he didn't want us there because he thought we would steal their shit, like their style, their songs, their riffs.
Right.
Yeah, and so he was kind of bummed, so we left. But we lived in our van behind their office for like 3 days in LA once. And just hung out with Bill and Mugger, the guy who was their roadie and sort of was running SST, and who's a whole nother interesting character on his own. Do you know the story on Mugger? I'm not trying to get too far off the track here, but
no, not really.
He was doing early accounting, and they started using Microsoft really early on, and he was like, wow, this is really functional software. So he looked into it. He started buying Microsoft stock when it was like, like 89 cents a share.
Wow.
Just kept buying it. And well, I've heard from people who've run into him and stuff, said he's like a completely different man, the dapper Mugger. There you go.
Man. That's what a shot to call.
Wow. Yeah. And Ginn is in Taylor, Texas, which is a place that is most notable for being apparently really difficult to litigate in. It's lawsuit unfriendly. And I think that's a big part of the reason that he's there. and still just, yeah. I mean, like part of me is tempted to just go. I mean, like, I mean, I always said that, like, you know, I mean, it's too late now, but man, you know, no matter how much it would have sucked, I would have spent a year in the fall, you know. And I almost feel like with Gin, I don't know. The difference is, I guess it would be the same experience, but the difference is that, like, I feel like the fall makes good music. I don't think Gin is making good music at this point.
Right.
but part of me is kind of tempted to just be like, yeah, fuck it. I'm gonna go to Texas. I'm gonna go spend a year in Texas. and just tour with Gin.
You should.
Just for the stories.
Why not? Yeah.
Be amazing.
It'd be great.
That's like I was telling Rory last night or the other night. Like, time is my currency, though. You know, I have so many things I want to do.
No, that's
when
exactly.
When I think of guys like Greg, I'm like, God, you know, I always fantasized about having a really productive label with really good bands on it and doing really creative things. And for him just to run it like a garage sale is just so bizarre to me, you know?
Yeah.
I just like, oh, you dude, you're so lucky. And then to also apparently have horrible relationships with some of his former artists and stuff. That's just so sad to me.
Yeah. I mean, pretty much everybody, right? I mean, yeah, it's a bummer. Yeah. What about at what point did you guys play with Sonic Youth?
I think we started with those guys at again Irving Plaza, maybe opening for them.
And with that, like 80,
83, real early on. I can't remember.
Yeah.
I read Thurston's book, so I texted him. I'm like, dude, that book is so good. I didn't mention that I read Kim's too, because they're both good in their own way, you know.
Yeah.
But we were talking about, like, when was that exactly? He was going to look for a flyer, but I think it was probably 83 or so.
Wow.
Yeah, and then they came out and we hooked them up out here with a bunch of shows and stuff. And Thurston was just such a music hound that we had so much to talk about, and, you know, car rides, van rides, just talking about bizarre music. And he tells us about, like, the scene in New York, like the stuff you never really heard about, because he was kind of deep in that even before the band got going. So a lot of fun. And we'd always hang with them in New York and go to CB's and just the usual stuff. But
yeah, I was a big Sonic Youth fan. I mean, still am. But back in the day, especially, and I remember, I would show up early at shows, and they would pull in and they'd be like, you know, where's the record stores? I'd be like, oh, come, like, let's go this way. And I would, like, bring him to, and like you were saying about, you guys, like, going on the like being big collectors and knowing everything that you're on the lookout for. And I've never seen, I mean, to this day, I mean, this is like 35 years ago. I've still never seen anybody go through records with the same, like, efficiency and, like, just speed and efficiency as Thurston Moore. Just like, you know, and it's like next, next. I mean, it was really something to behold. Like, damn, that guy's on a mission.
Professional, yeah.
Yeah.
I love it that he's doing that and that people are still doing it. You know, the vinyl thing has all the markings of just being a fad, but it seems to be hanging tight.
Oh yeah, no, I think it's already back too long now for I mean, I think it makes sense to me that, like, I mean, the fact that everything is so disposable now anyways, like there's no need for any kind of medium, right? It's all, you know, you can just be streaming it all. And it's like, if you're going to have a thing, right, what would you rather have, a plastic cassette or CD, or would you rather have like this big, beautiful, you know, like like thing, tactile thing that you can hold, you know? And the fact that, like, yeah, I mean, there are kids buying records now who I don't know. At some point, are like if CDs came back, I would think, okay, that's a fad. Right?
My kids buy records because they want the digital download, but they also want to look at the record. And I spent so much of my childhood reading liner notes while listening to new records. And I'm just like, I can't believe, I mean, I guess it's selfish of me to like, everyone should do this, but it's just, I don't know. It was a great pastime.
Yeah. I usually, like, if I most of the time listen to music in the car, so I do stream a fair amount of it, but it's like if I find myself listening to a record more than like a few times, I'm like, all right, throw these guys a couple bucks and buy the vinyl. And it's like a lot of the records, since we've moved, like have never been opened. You know what I mean? But it's like, well, like I feel obligated because I've listened to the music enough where it's like, all right, I should throw these guys some money here. And then it's like you have the thing, but it's also like, if you've been on any of the streaming platforms for a while, but you've seen like stuff come and go where it's like, oh, I like that's gone, or like it's not on the internet anymore. Like we've talked about this separately, but like a lot of that stuff just disappears, and it's like then you end up on Discogs trying to buy like the Japanese pressing of the first Dilute album from 5440 or Fight Records, which is my current.
Don't get me started on things you have to dig on Discogs that pop up once a year.
Yeah, you can get hard up real fast. Yeah.
I mean, personally, I hope CDs stay dead on the note of CDs because I like being able to get anything I want on CD for $5 forever. Everyone can stay out of my way. Those are mine.
Yeah. I have tons of CDs still. In fact, I was digging at my mom's garage for them today because I was trying to explain to somebody how you can hear the ghost pedal on Houses of the Holy in the recording. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to play it on CD because I thought it might. Is it on Houses of the Holy?
It is Houses of the Holy that you can hear the squeak on. Yeah.
Is it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Trying to explain to somebody like, oh yeah, you could hear it. And I go, but it's just like this crazy drum sound, but yeah, I don't know. I'm just really glad that vinyl's happening still and the excitement of it and everything.
They make more money for artists too, is what I hear. So people like that vinyl's in because you make a lot more money selling records on the road than you do selling CDs.
Yeah. And I know locally, anyhow, at least the pressing places, they pay those people pretty well.
That's what I hear. Yeah. I hear there's a lot of debate, I think, about which people can be really picky about their plant, and then like when big artists like Taylor Swift press a record, they tie up the queue, and it's really fascinating. We should have more. That's a good manufacturing job. We should open like 1 billion more record pressing plants in the U.S. That'd be awesome.
That's my
it is the one that's local to me that I won't mention because those relationships I protect and stuff. But I know they pay their people very well. I believe they get health benefits too after like 30 days.
Oh yeah,
and that's pretty rare in this world today. So,
is that the one on the east side in Detroit?
Yeah, right down by Wayne State.
Yeah. Oh no, there's another one too.
Not Archer.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, the other
Archer's
one. Yep.
Another story. That's an
yeah.
thing that those pressers in there, like 75 years old, and but a lot of electronic DJs still use it. I mean, they'll literally press there and then go play that night at an EMD thing in Detroit. But that whole factory they're always like, oh my God, thank God we're surrounded by mom and pop machine shops from the auto industry. Because that shit is always breaking here.
Oh my God. Yeah. It's like, oh, we need a die made in-house by some guy who died 40 years ago. Like, who do we call?
Exactly. But there's so many still, even though the auto industry is so decentralized, there's so many little tool and die places around Detroit.
Yeah, you can get anything. You can get anything made like that. The day of it's such a wonderful place to be if you're always breaking shit.
Yeah.
Andrew, you mentioned that your dad was a Navy pilot?
Yeah, he was one of the last propeller job, P2V Neptune, hurricane hunters, when they still weren't sure that jet engines would work in hurricanes. So they were still flying prop jobs. He's got all sorts of, he's passed away, bless him, but all sorts of crazy stories. My joke is always that like the rest of his life was just really dull. You know, and I'm going through his slides right now. He has boxes and boxes of them of you know, like flying into the hurricane and in the middle of the eye and like taking off when palm trees are like touching the ground, like the top of the palm trees touching the ground from the wind and stuff. Just crazy stuff they used to do.
That is wild.
That's sick.
Yeah, it was something. He played it down when we were kids. He never really talked about it. He still used to fly with his old Navy buddy, like a beach twin or something, you know, but just for recreation to go like up north and go fishing in Rory's neighborhood and stuff.
Yeah.
But that's what he did. And then he was involved in other stuff, finally in the boat business. Before he retired with Formula boats, those big offshore things. So
Formula boats like
the brand Formula, make the big offshore cigarette style boats.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So that's what I was picturing. Yeah. So like racing, like offshore racing.
Well, they make cabin cruisers and stuff too, but Formula has they're like way more solid than most of the other brands. They have a great reputation. What's his name? The new head of Ram, who was formerly the head of Dodge. He has one, and in passing, somehow he found out my dad worked for Formula, and he was like, "Oh my God!" He's like pestering me. What's his name?
Tim Kaniskis?
Yeah, Kaniskis.
Yeah,
it's like a 38 PC, and in passing, someone mentioned like, "Oh yeah, Andy's dad worked for Formula," and he's like wanted to know all this stuff. They make them in Indiana because the quality in Florida was too substandard. So they have this factory in Indiana of all these like farmers in the off season and stuff, and it works out really well for them.
Yeah, super cool.
Crazy.
Poke around monsters. They're awesome. It's like when you're a kid in northern Michigan, like it's like a cigarette boat or a Formula. It's like you want to be going super fast offshore, like across Lake Michigan down to Chicago. It's the dream. It's so cool. I didn't know that.
The gas. Yeah, he was not involved in like management or anything.
Yeah.
He just loved boats and had been around him his whole life. So
yeah, they're cool.
To get back to records though, like where that was going is I had the dream of opening a record store and being Rory's neighbor, but unfortunately apparently two people got there before me. They had this long running, what was the store that was long running forever, and they had
New Moon.
Yeah, New Moon. And when they went out of business, I was like, there's my window.
Yeah, that was your window. You know, the thing with New Moon, this is like, it's very Traverse City inside baseball, but there was this guy, Steve Bass, who was like, he was one of those like 35-year-olds who hung out with only teenagers. And like, we didn't really, you know, it was like we at the time thought it was weird. It was like, like
when you're the teenager.
Yeah, we're like, why is this guy always trying to get us to come over to his house and drink beers? But he used to do these DIY shows in town, and he was just an asshole. He was like super mean to everybody, but he was like bigger than everybody because he was an adult, and he, like was always trying to hit on like teenage girls and stuff. But it was like he was this unavoidable fixture in town, and he like. So New Moon was going strong. It was like where you would go hang out record store. It was like really small, but like great selection, super forward thinking. Like we're like always first with new stuff that you'd read about, and then like was informed by the local college station. It was great. It was like incredible, and it had like that kind of like hippie vibe, like it had been there for 30 years at the time. And so Steve opened up a record store up the street. All of his friends and like a lot of the scene kids like worked at New Moon. And Steve opened this record store up the street where he didn't pay people. So like he would just have like the teenage friends like that he hung out with would just work there all day for free. So of course he was able to like undercut New Moon. Like everything was cheaper. And then all the scene kids were going to his place because it was like, it was like he was the guy we all knew. And it like very, very quickly put New Moon out of business. And like, that was the end of it. And then there was probably, and obviously like that little store closed when Steve moved out of town. And then there was like a 20-year period where there was no record store in Traverse City until recently. So RPM now is like a great this is really good pod. This is applying to like 5 people, but
You
it's
think
like a
they'll,
little.
If you're ever in Traverse City,
They have they have a really good selection of vinyl, and then they do like turntable and like amp repair, and like they'll refurbish stuff for you. It's a really, really good spot. But yeah, you had a window, man. You could have been right there. Although maybe the move is to move in next to RPM Records and get a bunch of teenagers to work at your place for free, and then undercut them and put them out of business. We can continue the cycle of.
there you go.
hey, I'll be there in the summer. I won't be doing much.
Yeah, that's right.
I do this for free. I can work at a
Get
record
Matty.
store all day.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
You could do this at the record store for free. Yeah.
Well, I have one more kid in high school. My mom lives down the street, which is why we're here, basically.
Yeah.
But like all dudes from the Rust Belt region, the goal is to get to Northern Michigan. Rory, of course, is from there, so he's much less impressed by it.
My goal is to get out. Yeah.
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 Let me out.
But Detroit, I mean, what a change, Rory, and you were there for most of it.
Dude. Yeah.
Just incredible.
Yeah, that was a really like pivotal period in town, and like now I go back and don't recognize. I've only been gone for 3 or 4 years, but yeah, it was like that like early aughts until like 2020s was a lot of shit happening. Go ahead.
Well, it's the Crazy Bakery that's like world renowned. That was on Elizabeth Street.
Oh, Avalon.
Yeah, the Avalon Bakery.
Yeah.
The door next to that, in between that and the old Cobb's Corner Bar, a bunch of friends of mine from Wayne State used to rent that as like a quote unquote art studio / place to drink beer. And I think we talked about this once, and it was like $50 a month.
Yeah, that was
Some professor at Wayne owned the whole block, and he was just like, "Oh yeah, you're a student, $50."
Yeah. There were those deals when we got there. We had that whole warehouse where the Carhartt like flagship store is now. The top 3, it was an old Marmon dealership, and then it was a Chrysler dealership, and it was like all this beautiful like 1/4-inch hand-laid tile everywhere, and like incredible Albert Kahn design building. And we had the entire, I think, 3rd floor of the building or 2nd floor of the building, which was like half a city block, and it was $150 a month. And it was like, it was like when we moved there, it was like you said, it was like we stored cars there, but it was like we'd go there and drink beers and like pee on the roof, and like it was like Lost Boys, like such a good place to hang out and rent on cars. And like a couple times we like set up bands in there and like did band practice, and then like we rented it out for photo shoots because it had like this grimy industrial so like the C7 Corvette owner's manual, if you open it up, is all the photography from that, and like a bunch of the dealership brochures are shot in our barn. And like there are shots from that shoot where you can see the Lada next to the C7 like in the same shot, or obviously they didn't make it to the Corvette owner's manual, but like there are a lot of shots where the Lada's in the background
with its Soviet livery.
Oh yeah.
Oh baby.
And it was like at the time way more Soviet, because when Camille took it, he took all the.
Can we repaint that this year while I'm out there? Can we put all that back on
I think
there?
so. Yeah, I think we should.
Yeah.
Most of it is still there in.
We just to follow the lines.
Dirt outlines. Yeah. Like you just cover them
problem.
back up. Have you been up to the hill climb?
No, I've tried to make it several times because I always send you a text like, I'm going to try to make it this weekend, but inevitably something happens. But definitely this year.
Yeah, you got to do it.
As I told you last summer, I was like, Andy has as much fun as possible summer.
Yeah.
This year I'm going to do that again, but actually do it.
It was a practice run.
Yeah, it was a practice run. You guys, not to focus back to Detroit, but this is a kind of a cool car theme thing. When they debuted the 2nd generation G-Wagon, I guess this would have been 2000, what are we in, 24?
Yeah.
2018 maybe?
Yeah.
They did it at the Michigan Palace.
Yeah.
Which is a parking garage, but the roof is still there. And the Michigan Palace is famous for many reasons, but primarily because Metallic KO, the Stooges album, was recorded there.
Oh, right.
The Kiss video of Rock and Roll All Night, where there's no crowd, but they have those big black balls bouncing around, that was shot there. For about 3 years, it was like a crazy concert center where like everyone from like, well, obviously Kiss, Aerosmith, New York Dolls played there New Year's Eve.
Wow.
And so they're debuting this. They snuck all these people in the Michigan Palace because no one really knew what was going to happen and stuff. And then when the lights go on and stuff, I'm standing there next to some Mercedes dudes. I'm like, oh my God, this is where the New York Dolls and Alice Cooper played. And they're like, no, G-Wagon, fireworks, lights, action. So anyhow.
It is such a treasure. And like waiting to read the story that it's getting knocked down, but it's like, it is an old theater with like this super, I don't know, like Rococo style maybe, ceiling with all the like really fine detailing, but it's all decayed. But you can go park there now. It's in I think it's in 8 Miles. Isn't it in 8 Miles? Isn't there a scene where like the two rival gangs meet up or whatever? But it is like such a treasure, and it's right downtown, right across from Nick's. Have you ever been to the Gaslight Lounge?
I haven't.
So do you know where it is? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's right across the street there, and it looks abandoned. It's like, it is, it's like the 70s style, little like kind of, not dive bar, it's a lounge. Like you could tell it used to be kind of like a cool spot to hang out. But I went in there one time with my friend Jeremy. We were like out riding bikes, and we were ripped when we showed up. I forgot what we were supposed to be doing. We were supposed to be out doing something. But I was like, have you ever been in here? And he's like, I've never seen anyone go in there. And I was like, all right, we're going in. Like I went and opened the door, and the bartender was in there by himself and was absolutely bewildered to see like two customers. He was like, can I help you? And I was like, is the bar open? He was like, yeah, yeah. And I was like, can we get some beers? And he was like, yeah, I mean, I get like, but he was like and I was like, is this a known like money laundering situation where like everybody knows it's like open but not open? We hung out in there, and the guy just kept pouring us free shots because it was like, he was so surprised. It was like, granted, it may have been like.
Did you ask him when the last time he had a customer was?
It was absolute bewilderment. Like. What are you
doing here?
Rory, my hometown had no fewer than like 3 of those per city block. When I was going to school out there, like you just knew, you just don't. That's not a business.
Yeah, and it's like that usually you can spot them a mile away, but I was like, this is like a bar downtown in like, it's like walking distance from all of the stadiums in town. Like people have to come in here, right? It's like, nope. They do not. They not that kind of a place.
Did you ever go to any of the parties in the train station before the Ford family took it over?
I broke into the train station a couple times, but I did not go into any parties in there.
They were so bold. They would bring generators.
Yeah, and nobody cared.
Nobody cared.
Yeah. I broke in there when I was in college the last time, and there were a bunch of like dogs in there like running around, and you could hear, like, we were in the building and you could hear them like barking from in the distance, but you could tell like you were inside and they were also inside.
Right.
And it was like, and then you could hear like the little like the toenails on the concrete and like running like a big group of dogs, and we were like so fucking freaked out, like immediately started sprinting, and like it like whatever direction it sounded like they were coming in, we like took off like Scooby-Doo style and jumped under the fence and like took off. It was so, never saw the dogs, never got bit, but it was like, like you're tensed up being in there at night anyway, and it was like the sound of those dogs like barking and growling at night was like still like hair standing on the back of my neck. It was like,
wow.
It was really I was like, am I gonna die here mauled by a group of like pit bulls in the Detroit train station? Man, it was really scary.
I still can't believe the Ford and the Buell families made the play on that building, but I mean, thank God, if it works, it's beautiful inside now.
Even if it doesn't, sometimes you just need a patron to like clean it up, like at least it's not going to collapse in on itself.
Do you know the story on that at all, Peter? That when they started restoring it, all these artifacts that had been stolen from it over the last 25, 35 years started showing up anonymously, like giant clocks and like brass chandeliers and stuff like that. People were so excited to see that all this stuff that had been pilfered over the last 30 years. People were just like,
That's beautiful.
All right. Yeah.
yeah.
Wow.
Hard to fence
That's crazy.
All right.
Yeah.
What I mean, I know that they restored it. What is the function of that building now? Is it just kind of like a space to be used for events, or is it?
I think that's the plan. I mean, the offices, Ford has a tech center with their, isn't there autonomous driving in that building to the left of it right now?
Yeah, that's at Buell's place, up the street. But yeah, there's offices in there. And I think that's the intention is for it to be mostly Ford office space. Okay. And there's a bunch of whatever event space and like community space or whatever. But it is, like back in the day, like it was never fully occupied. Like it was like they built it like right basically at the dawn of the automobile, like where it really like hurt train travel and like the center of cars in the world. And it was like, oh,
right,
never mind. Like,
yeah.
But yeah, it was, it's really cool. It's like next time you're in town, it's a really, really cool thing to go check out. I mean, it's cooler if you have the context of having been chased by dogs when it was like an absolute dump.
Or taken hallucinogenics and gone to a illegal party.
Yeah. 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 But yeah, it's cool. It's like I said, it's like one of those things that's like totally unrecognizable. When we were leaving town, I think it had just gotten windows for the first time in like whatever 30 years.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I mean, that was one of those spots that would always turn up in those kind of ruin porn portfolios.
Yeah, yeah. Urbex type stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, there was a ton of that. I mean, that was like, it was kind of really the end of that era when we moved to town. It was like stuff was getting redeveloped and like police were keeping it up on that stuff. And like when we would go there in college and stuff, it was like, it's total fucking free for all. People were coming all over the world to do like tours of the Packard plant. And like, that was one, I used to drive past the Packard plant on the way to work, from work to my shop. In Hamtramck, and one day it's like do it every day. And one day I drove under the Packard plant and the bridge, like there was a bridge that connected the two big parts of the plant, and it like went over the road. And one day I just made a left onto that road, and the bridge had fallen into the street and was like covered. Like it was like just like you could have been walking or driving underneath it. Poop, totally collapsed.
Damn.
Yeah.
Did that get torn down ultimately?
Yeah,
the
just recently.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah.
But it was, again, Albert Kahn, solid as a rock.
Yeah.
And there was this brief period when I think Ray Wirt was still running Jalopnik. Was it Ray? And they would have these like great stories like bunch of kids push a pickup truck off the Packard plant. And like somebody who knew them just happened to be going by with a camera. They'd video it. I mean, it was just like, that was another Detroit spot that was a free for all. And it was one of those great Detroit properties that like nobody really knew who owned it. Yeah. There was this guy who lived across the street for years who claimed he owned it and like kind of did for 20 years because nobody else would claim it.
Yeah.
Right.
And he was renting out rooms and stuff for artists and car mechanics. And
there
was like 8 million fiberglass ski boats stored in there.
Was he paying like property taxes?
No. There's a really good video of friend of the pod, Andy Diderossi. This is like how I got to know Andy in, I want to say 2012, trying to capture a tiger that got loose in the Packard plant. So like it was there for like a fashion photo shoot, which was totally unlicensed, obviously. And they're shooting with a live tiger, and it like got loose in the Packard plant. And somebody called, I think it's Angelovnik, but somebody called Andy and was like, "Hey Andy, there's a tiger loose in the Packard plant." And he's like, "Oh, I'll come get it." And he like showed up with like one of those hedge trimmers, like the gas hedge trimmers where like the teeth go like this. It's kind of like a chainsaw, but not a chainsaw.
I know what you're
in a
talking
meaningful
about.
way.
Yeah.
And then a weed whacker, and he's like, "Oh, we're gonna scare it into a room and like contain it." And it was like they approach a live tiger in a stairwell, like two dudes, and they like try to scare it with the weed whacker, and it is like not scared. Like it's like not. It's like
It's like he just sees food, man.
yeah, he's like, God damn, this is great. But yeah, that's the kind of shit that was happening when we moved to town, and it was like, oh man, it was, obviously not all good, but it was pretty fun. It was pretty. Oh yeah, here's the video. Oh, it's gone. The video's gone.
But there's still a photo.
yeah.
A photo survives of with the weed
I mean,
whacker
that-
and the tiger.
That is
How
so
did
much
that? How did that
closer.
end?
I don't remember. We're looking at a news article about it. It said, I got a call from a friend who asked me to help get this tiger out of a staircase, said Andy Wendler, 28 of Detroit. He asked me if I had a leaf blower, and I said I had a weed whacker, so he told me to bring that. And I stopped what I was doing. I grabbed my tools, and I hopped in my truck because, tiger. I don't know much about tiger logistics, but we were told to be this huge blue tarp monster with the weed whacker and try to be scary and make loud noises. And that just made him angry. So you could say he got tiger rage. So we retreated. You can watch the herring attempt in the video here. Let's see. The trainers were apparently able to get the tiger safely
found a
back
backup.
into its cage. Yeah. Oh, good. But yeah, very, very like, that was the vibe when we moved to town. Just a total, free for all.
There was always something going on, unlicensed, unsanctioned, uninsured.
It was a better world.
Yeah. We don't realize how lucky we had it with with that shit in Detroit.
Yeah.
It was so cheap. Andrew, it should be mentioned too, placed this year in the rally.
Oh yeah. No, he won the championship. Yeah.
He won the championship.
Yeah. Won his class in ARA. He did a ton of races and, but yeah, was super dedicated. Now he's doing all the media for ARA, doing all their social media stuff. But, a fixture on the doing dumb shit in Detroit scene for a very long time.
Yes.
Yeah.
I has a lot of silly cars. I live vicariously through him. Like, oh,
Yeah.
sweet, he bought that thing. I saw that too.
Yeah, we should have him on. He's like, he's a goof. He's got the car factory full of Durlette cars, and like, I went down there 2 years ago or a year ago to hang out for a week, and it was like, absolutely, like I have a pretty high tolerance for like projects, but it was like giving me project anxiety. Like the number of like half disassembled go-karts and motorcycles, and like the roof is pouring water through it, and there's buses and a fire truck, and it's like I'm getting like like my own couple of projects like give me a nonstop like low level panic at all times. And like his situation, have you been to the factory?
I have not. I need to call him next
You
time
should-
I'm up there.
Yeah, you should go in there because it is like, again, like the sheer like untackleability of it is like, it's on one hand very intriguing because it's like, man, if you could get your arms around this stuff, you'd have some cool shit happening in here. But like, he also did a 24-hour indoor-outdoor go-kart race, I think in 2019 there, which is like, it was like build your own cart and show up. You can race anything. It's a 24, like the track went into the factory and then back out of the factory into the yard and then back into the factory. And it was like a literal 24-hour go-kart race for like home-built go-karts.
Dude, that sounds like the most fun thing ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it does sound fun, but he shot a feature length documentary of the process and the race. It's brutal. Like if you think about like doing a 24-hour road drive, like what your body
Yeah.
starts to feel like.
Yeah.
24 hours in a homemade go-kart with no suspension.
No
like,
suspension. Yeah.
is like on a hard wooden seat with like a little fuzzy piece of padding. Like it's brutal. Like it's a really tough going. It like you get the first 4 or 5 hours is pretty fun.
I would think that like like the first thing you would do, like if you wanted to actually compete in that, would be to engineer a go-kart with suspension and a comfortable seat, just so that you could survive it, you know.
That is what you would do. That is not what a lot of people did.
Oh, I know. Well, I mean, it's kind of it kind of violates the spirit of it.
Yeah.
People
But
like
I love
showing
that
up with
idea.
5 Predator engines in boxes.
Oh yeah.
Like
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
put the Harbor Freight. Give me 5
Yeah.
of those on. I know it's not going to last.
Yeah.
The soapbox derby.
That was 2 years ago. I was rebuilding a go-kart for the girls, and I was rebuilding. I had the Predator motor apart on my bench, and I was like day 3, like trying to sort out this carburetor issue that like turned into like me tearing down the entire motor. And then I was like, somehow it dawned on me. I was like, I should Google how much these motors are at Harbor Freight. And it was like $140 motor. And I just like took everything and threw it in the trash and like went down to Harbor. It was like, oh God, it's like I'm rebuilding a commodity motor that's like literally built to be disposable. Like there's a store with 500 of these in my neighborhood, and they're $150 a piece.
The thing that's so brilliant about those motors too is they start like on the second pull.
Oh
when
yeah,
you get them out of the box, and then
they're
just
incredible.
run. I mean, it's like
yeah. No, I mean they're awesome. I mean, like they're so many different like hot rod parts, and like they're so modular. You can bolt them to anything. You can get like any configuration, and like I said, you want to build a go-kart or you want to build like everything is available. Like all the hop up stuff, all the like governor deletes and carburetors and like exhaust, and like they're really cool. The go-kart that that I'm talking about now was given to me by actually Jimmy, friend of the pod. Was like called when we moved up here, and he's like, "Hey, you want to go kart for the girls?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course." And I went and picked it up from this barn up in Leelanau County, and it was like cracked. Like all of the welds were cracked. Like there were like it was just beat to shit. Like it had been owned by some teenage boys, and they like absolutely fucking hammered it to death. So I took it apart, welded it all back together, and I like started putting it back together and put the motor in it. And I was like, you know, the girls were 5 and 3 at the time. And I was like talking to Jimmy, and I was like, hey, how fast does this thing go? Like, you know, cause like I'm going to hand it over to a baby. And he's like, I mean, I think we clocked it around like 53, 55 miles an hour. Like no seatbelt, no roll bar. It was like, all right, I'm going to go ahead and engineer a governor for this thing. It's like, that's probably too fast for the babies to handle.
You just got to put a restrictor plate on it or something. Right?
Yeah, no, it's now it's governed, but it's like
I can see your youngest being like 53, no problem. I'm in there.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, and it was like I'm glad I asked him that before I put them in it to drive. It's fast now. I mean, it's fast enough to get her done for sure.
Yeah. Well, that's it. I mean, you got to make sure. You got to leave a little bit of danger.
Yeah, of course.
Otherwise, they're not gonna learn anything.
You're not gonna respect it, and it's also like if you're gonna learn how to drift it, like you have to have the power to get through and around it. Like
Exactly.
yeah, that's what are you
bring
learning?
it loose?
Yeah. What else would you want to learn?
man.
All right, boys. What do you think? We got 2 hours here.
Yeah, it's a pod.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's do it.
All right.
We will stay tired for our nice people at home. This will be a public episode, so just the regular.
Stay tired.
Stay tired.
stay tired.
Hell
There we
yeah,
go.
yeah.
Cool.
Let's go. Awesome.
Thanks for coming on, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, this was super fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Great to meet you and super fun conversation, and we should do it again.
Yeah, for sure.
Maybe we should have a couple 9-hour van rides and
Now we're talking.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.